She had done nothing wrong. She had rejected a king's advances. She had remained faithful to her husband. She had been, by every measure, a virtuous woman. And for this, she was dragged before the queen's guards on a festival day. Her breasts were cut off and thrown to the dogs. Her nose was sliced away. Her ears were removed. Her lips were carved from her face. Her tongue was ripped out. Then, still alive, still conscious, she was sent home to her husband. This is the story of what happened when King Xerxes of Persia became obsessed with a woman he could not have. It is a story of desire, betrayal, jealousy, and one of the most horrific punishments ever recorded in ancient history. And the cruelest part?
The woman who suffered this fate was completely innocent. She was punished for her daughter's actions. She was mutilated because a queen needed someone to blame. This is what happens when obsession meets absolute power. To understand this story, you need to understand the man at its center. Xerxes I ruled the Persian Empire from 486 to 465 BC. He was the king of kings, the ruler of the largest empire the world had ever seen, stretching from Egypt to India, from the Black Sea to the Arabian Peninsula. He was the son of Darius the Great and Atassa, daughter of Cyrus the Great himself. Royal blood ran through his veins from both sides. He was born to rule. But Xerxes is best remembered in the West for one thing: his failed invasion of Greece.
In 480 BC, Xerxes assembled what ancient sources describe as the largest army ever gathered. Herodotus claimed it numbered in the millions, though modern historians estimate around 300,000 troops. Still, it was a force unlike anything the world had seen. He crossed the Hellespont on a bridge of boats. He marched through Thrace and Macedonia. He fought the famous Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held his army for 3 days. And then he lost. The Greeks destroyed his fleet at the Battle of Salamis. His army was defeated at Plataea. The great invasion collapsed, and Xerxes retreated back to Persia in humiliation. It was during this retreat, in the winter of 479 BC, that our story begins. While waiting in the city of Sardis, Xerxes became fixated on a woman. Not just any woman. This was the wife of his own brother, Macestus. Macestus was one of the 6 chief marshals of the Greek campaign. He was a prince of the blood, a trusted general, a loyal brother who had fought beside Xerxes throughout the war. And his wife was, by all accounts, a woman of exceptional beauty and virtue. Xerxes wanted her. He sent her messages. He made his desires known. He offered her everything a king could offer: wealth, position, power beyond imagination. She refused, every time. This was almost unheard of in the ancient world. Kings took what they wanted. Women, especially, had little power to resist. But this unnamed woman held firm.
She would not betray her husband. She would not dishonor herself. She would not submit to the king's demands, no matter how persistent they became. And here is where Xerxes made a choice that would destroy an entire family. Rather than accept her rejection, rather than move on to the countless other women available to a king, Xerxes decided to play a longer game. He arranged a marriage. His eldest son, Crown Prince Darius, would marry Artante, the daughter of Macestes and his wife. By bringing the daughter into the royal household, Xerxes reasoned, he would have constant access to the mother. Proximity would wear down her resistance. Time would give him what persuasion could not. Macestes agreed to the marriage. Why would he refuse?
What we know is that the affair continued for some time, hidden from the court, hidden from the crown prince, hidden from Queen Amestris, until the robe. Amestris, the queen of Persia, was not a woman to be trifled with. She was the daughter of Otanes, one of the 7 nobles who had helped Darius take the throne. She had been married to Xerxes since before he became king. She had given him children, including the crown prince. She wielded enormous power in the Persian court, and she had woven a robe for her husband. This was no ordinary garment. It was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, embroidered with gold, magnificent in its beauty. When Xerxes wore it, He drew admiration from everyone who saw him. He loved that robe.
He wore it everywhere. One day, Xerxes visited Artante while wearing the robe. He was pleased with her, delighted by her company, and in a moment of passion, he made a promise. "Ask me for anything you desire," he said, "anything at all, and I will give it to you." Artante looked at the robe. "I want that," she said. Xerxes froze. He knew what giving her that robe would mean. His wife had woven it with her own hands. If Artante wore it in public, Amestris would know immediately. The affair would be exposed. The scandal would be catastrophic. He tried to change her mind. He offered her alternatives. Cities. He would give her entire cities to rule. Gold. Mountains of gold. Wealth beyond counting. An army. She could have her own personal army. 10,000 men who answered only to her. Artante refused them all. She wanted the robe, and Xerxes had given his word. In Persian culture, a king's oath was sacred. To break a promise was to lose honor, to lose face, to diminish the very power that made him king. Xerxes had no choice. He gave her the robe. Artante wore it proudly. She gloried in it, parading through the palace in a garment everyone recognized as the queen's gift to the king. Amestris saw her wearing it, and Amestris understood everything. Here is where the story takes its darkest turn. Amestris wanted revenge, but strangely she did not blame Artante. The queen directed her fury at a different target, Artante's mother.
Perhaps Amestris believed the mother had encouraged the affair. Perhaps she blamed her for raising a daughter who would seduce a king. Perhaps she simply needed someone to punish, and the mother was more vulnerable than the daughter, who was now married to the crown prince. Or perhaps there was political calculation at work. Some historians have noted that when Artante asked for the royal robe, she may have been making a symbolic claim to the throne on behalf of her father Misistes. In Persian culture, the royal robe was not just clothing, it was a symbol of kingship itself. By wearing it, Artante might have been signaling ambitions that went far beyond a simple affair.
Whatever the reason, Amestris decided that Misistes' wife would pay the price. But she was patient. She waited for exactly the right moment. In Persia, there was a festival called Tukta, celebrated on the king's birthday. On this day, according to ancient custom, the king was obligated to grant any request made of him. No matter what was asked, he could not refuse. Amestris waited for Tuktuk.
Xerxes tried one last desperate measure. He summoned his brother Misistes for a private meeting. "Divorce your wife," Xerxes said. "Set her aside. I will give you one of my own daughters instead. You will be my true son-in-law. Just abandon the woman you married." Misistes was stunned. He loved his wife. He had been married to her for years. She had given him children. "My lord," he said, "what you ask is impossible. My wife is the mother of my sons. She has been faithful to me. I have no reason to abandon her." The brothers argued. Misistes grew angry, confused by the strange request. Finally, he stormed out, saying, "My lord, you have not destroyed me yet." He went home to find his wife, but Amestris had already acted. While Xerxes was trying to convince Misistes to abandon his wife, the queen had sent for the royal guards. She had the woman seized and brought before her. What happened next, according to Herodotus, was one of the most brutal punishments ever inflicted on an innocent person. The guards held the woman down. They cut off her breasts and threw them to the dogs. They cut off her nose. They cut off her ears. They cut off her lips. They ripped out her tongue. Then, mutilated beyond recognition, but still alive, she was sent home. When Misistes arrived at his house, he found his wife in this condition. The woman who had been faithful to him, who had resisted a king's advances to remain loyal, who had done nothing wrong except raise a daughter who caught a king's eye, was now a horror of flesh and blood. Misistes understood immediately. He knew this was Xerxes' doing. He knew there would be no justice, no appeal, no recourse. He gathered his sons and his loyal guards.
They left the city quietly, heading east toward Bactria, where Xerxes served as satrap. There he planned to raise a rebellion against his brother. He never made it. Xerxes learned of the escape. He sent an army in pursuit. The king's soldiers caught up with Xerxes on the road. There was no trial, no negotiation. Xerxes was killed. His sons were killed. Every guard who had accompanied them was killed. The entire family was destroyed, except for Artainte, who remained in the palace as the wife of Crown Prince Darius. Her fate after this is unknown. Herodotus says only that she and her whole household were fated to die, though when and how is lost to history. And so ends the story of Xerxes' obsession. What can we make of this horrific tale? First, we should note that our only source is Herodotus, the Greek historian who wrote decades after these events. The Greeks had every reason to portray Persian kings as cruel and decadent. Some scholars believe the story was exaggerated or even invented to make Xerxes look like a monster. But the core elements ring true.
Persian court politics were notoriously brutal. Queens like Amestris wielded real power and used it ruthlessly. The punishment described, while extreme, was not unknown in the ancient world, and the destruction of a rival's family was a common response to suspected rebellion. Whether every detail is accurate, the story reflects a reality of absolute power that ancient people understood well. Xerxes himself did not escape the consequences of his reign. In 465 BC, he was assassinated in his own bedroom, killed by a conspiracy of courtiers. His son Darius, the same crown prince who had been married to Artainte, was also murdered. The empire Xerxes ruled eventually fell to Alexander the Great, who burned the palace at Persepolis to the ground.
Nothing lasts forever. Not beauty, not power, not even the greatest empire on earth. But stories survive. And this story reminds us of something important about human nature. Desire, when it meets absolute power, can become something monstrous. A king wanted a woman who said no. Because he could not accept that rejection, an innocent woman was mutilated. A loyal brother was murdered. An entire family was destroyed. All because one man could not control his obsession. Miciste's wife never even gets a name in the historical record. We know her only by her relationship to men, wife of Micistes, mother of Artainte. Her identity has been lost to time, but her suffering has not been forgotten.
For 25 centuries, people have read Herodotus and been horrified by what was done to her. For 25 centuries, her story has been told as a warning about the cruelty that power enables. She was a woman who did everything right. She was faithful. She was virtuous. She refused to betray her husband. And she was punished for it in ways that still shock us today. Some crimes are so great that history refuses to let them be forgotten. This is one of them.